let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring a truly incredible story, how a movement that started in the harsh, remote deserts of Arabia completely transformed into one of the world's largest empires and most influential civilizations. We're going to look closely at the geographic and cultural setting of early Arabia, the origins and core beliefs of Islam, and how early Islamic institutions sparked this massive era of achievement in learning, art, government, and trade.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with Arabia before Islam, explore Muhammad and the core beliefs, map out the early Islamic empire, dive into their incredible golden age, and then finish up with a quick review and takeaway.
Part 1. Arabia before Islam, focusing on the geographic and cultural setting.
Context is absolutely everything in history, right? To understand how this civilization started, we first have to picture the world of the 5th and 6th centuries. Before Islam, the Arabian Peninsula wasn't a single unified nation. It's a really harsh, dry environment where rainfall and good farming land are super rare. Because of that, it was home to scattered, divided, migratory tribes known as the Bedouin. They were constantly competing for scarce resources, getting by on animal herding, and sometimes raiding trade caravans. Culturally, it was a real mix. You had polytheistic beliefs, people worshipping many gods, living right alongside some monotheistic influences from neighboring Jewish and Christian communities.
Now this is where historical timing is just fascinating. Just to the north of Arabia, you had the two massive superpowers of the ancient world, the Byzantine Empire and the Sasanian Persian Empire. Between 602 and 628, these two giants basically fought themselves to exhaustion in what's known as the last great war of antiquity. They drained their treasuries, they lost huge numbers of soldiers, and they heavily taxed their people. Meanwhile, they largely ignored the Arabian Peninsula, thinking of it as this harsh backwater with nothing of value. So while the empires weakened each other, Arabia was uniquely isolated and left alone. It created the absolute perfect vacuum for a new, unified movement to emerge.
Part 2. Muhammad and core beliefs.
So how did this divided region finally come together? Well, according to Muslim tradition, it all centers on one man, a merchant named Muhammad from a prominent tribe in the city of Mecca. Now, Mecca was a major trade hub and home to a very important sacred sanctuary called the Kaaba. Around 610 CE, Muhammad began preaching strict monotheism, worshiping just one god, Allah in Arabic, after receiving what Muslims believe were divine revelations. But, as you can imagine, telling people to abandon their traditional gods threatened the local economy and the status quo, so he faced intense pushback. This leads to 622 CE, a massive turning point called the Hijra. Muhammad and his followers emigrated to the city of Medina just to escape persecution. This event was so crucial for their survival that it actually marks year 1 of the Islamic lunar calendar. Eventually, by 630 CE, Muhammad successfully returned to Mecca, removed the polytheistic idols from the Kaaba, and unified much of Western Arabia.
As he led this new community, Muhammad taught some core beliefs that completely structured the daily lives of his followers. You've probably heard of the 5 pillars of Islam. They include the profession of faith that there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, daily prayer facing Mecca, giving charity to the needy, fasting during the holy month of Ramadan, and making a pilgrimage to Mecca.
What's really interesting here is that final pillar, the Hajj. This mandatory pilgrimage brings millions of Muslims to Mecca to center around the sacred Kaaba. But historically speaking, this ritual is deeply significant because it directly connects the new Islamic faith to the much older monotheistic traditions of the region. The rituals of the Hajj actually reenact important events in the life of the Prophet Abraham. So, for Muslims, Islam wasn't a brand new religion out of nowhere, it was a correction, a return to the pure monotheism of Abraham, creating a direct lineage with both Judaism and Christianity.
Part 3. The early Islamic empire, covering the Ummah and expansion.
You definitely want to remember this next vocabulary term, the Ummah. Forging the Ummah was arguably Muhammad's greatest early achievement. It means the unified community of believers. Remember how we said Arab society was all about bloodlines and tribal loyalty? Well, Muhammad essentially replaced those old, divisive rivalries with a religious brotherhood. You weren't just a member of your tribe anymore. You were part of the Ummah, totally united by shared faith and mutual defense. It was a total game changer. But in 632 CE, Muhammad died. And the tricky part, he didn't leave behind a clear set of instructions for who should take over. So the community had to choose a new leader, a position known as the Caliph, the political and religious successor to Muhammad. The first 4 caliphs oversaw a massive era of expansion. However, figuring out who actually had the right to be caliph like should it be a respected elder or does it have to be someone from Muhammad's bloodline, sparked some really deep political divisions and eventually led to the first Islamic civil wars.
Despite those internal struggles, the newly formed state expanded at lightning speed. It was basically the perfect storm. First, you had military unity. All those Arab tribes that used to fight each other were now an unprecedented, unified army. Second, weak opponents. Like we talked about, the Byzantine and Persian empires were totally drained, so their borders just collapsed. And third, religious motivation. The Arab Muslim armies had sky-high morale, believing their expansion was quite literally a sign of God's favor. Put all that together, and in just a few decades, this empire stretched from Spain all the way to the Indus River Valley.
Now, how did they handle conquering all that territory? Instead of forcing everyone to convert at the point of a sword, the conquerors usually offered peace agreements. Conquered groups like Christians, Jewish people, and Zoroastrians were classified as people of the book, meaning they were monotheists with revealed scriptures. They were actually allowed to keep their property and practice their religions freely. The catch was they had to pay a specific tax to the new Islamic government. This pragmatic policy made the rapid expansion so much smoother because a lot of people actually found this new rule way more tolerant than their old Byzantine or Persian rulers.
Part 4. Building a Civilization and the Golden Age.
So how do we know all this actually happened? As historians, we look at the historical evidence, the physical and textual clues left behind. We can trace the growth of this civilization by looking at their surviving architecture, the ancient texts they preserved, and, interestingly enough, changes in their physical currency.
The money is such a cool example of this cultural shift. At first, the early Arab conquerors literally just minted copies of the old Byzantine and Persian coins, complete with Christian crosses or Zoroastrian symbols. They just wanted people to trust the money. But by the end of the 7th century, the Umayyad dynasty purposefully changed things up. They introduced the gold dinar, completely stripping away foreign imagery and replacing it with purely Arabic text and Islamic inscriptions. This wasn't just economics. It was a loud, powerful statement that a unique, independent Arab-Islamic identity had arrived. This drive to build something distinct led to some massive achievements under the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasties. The Umayyads made Arabic the official language of government and built stunning structures like the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Later, the Abbasids moved the capital to Baghdad, turning it into this incredibly cosmopolitan intellectual hub. They created the Great Library of Baghdad, where scholars translated ancient Greek scientific and philosophical texts into Arabic. At the same time, they were running these massive trade networks linking Afro-Eurasia, bringing wealth and cultural exchange from China down to sub-Saharan Africa. Get this, the trade networks were so vast that archaeologists have actually found Abbasid silver coins buried in Viking hoards all the way up in Sweden. No way, right?
And it wasn't just science and trade. This era fostered an incredible golden age of literature and art too. Take the famous Persian mathematician and poet Omar Khayyam. His poetry, particularly the Rubaiyat, perfectly reflects a civilization that deeply valued philosophy, art, and complex thought, blending an appreciation for the worldly parts of life with really profound reflections on how fleeting our time on Earth is.
Part 5. Review and takeaway. All right, let's take a quick pause for a retrieval check to see what's stuck. Think about this for a second. What was that absolutely crucial Arabic term we talked about? The one describing the unified community of believers that replaced the old tribal bloodlines.
If you said the Ummah, you nailed it. Understanding the Ummah is absolutely the key to understanding how the early Islamic empire mobilized and expanded so effectively.
So what is the big takeaway from all of this? Ultimately, it's about a unique combination of factors. A unifying religious message forging the Ummah, combined with the geographic isolation of Arabia and the exhaustion of rival empires. It was the perfect historical timing that allowed a movement to transition from isolated desert tribes into a cosmopolitan empire that reshaped global governance, built vast trade networks, and established a cultural legacy that we still feel today.
I'm going to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you continue learning about this era. Think about those scholars in Baghdad translating all those ancient Greek texts. How much of our modern understanding of science, math, and philosophy was saved and expanded upon because this desert movement transformed into a global intellectual empire? Keep that in mind and never stop questioning the historical connections that shape our world today.